that still kind of like in the plan, or is it just kind of like, I know it's experimental, but are there any other guys that could potentially work back there that play corner, or is it just kind of like where is your room set right now that spring is complete?
I think it's always a fluid situation back there. You know, we try to cross-train guys as much as we can, so there is flexibility. But I thought Damon did a very good job, so I think he's got a chance to be really good at that position. He's new to it, but he showed a lot of promise.
Greg, what did you like from the spring game? I'm sure you've been asked this 8 times. What did you like about the spring game with Malik? The way that he made big plays, I think 10 tackles in the game, active. What did you see not only in that game but maybe in the whole spring that would explain the kind of success he had back then?
Well, he loves football, so he's a football guy. He studies it. He enjoys being in the meeting room. He enjoys doing the walkthrough stuff. That's, you know, when guys love it, it makes it a lot easier. But what I felt Saturday was a guy who was very comfortable in front of the crowd, game speed, those type of things. He looked very natural out there. In no way, shape, or form was any of it too big for him. And, you know, you don't know that. You know, even though we're in here and there's some people standing around, it's not the same. So, just like Saturday's not the same as the regular season, it's certainly a lot closer. And I thought Malik looked very comfortable in that setting.
The group as a whole is interesting. You know, you've got 2 new guys going in, 2 guys are going into the draft next week out of that room. Do you feel that there is a new leadership core developing in your room? I know it's very quick, it's just one spring, but do you feel like there's a real difference you can feel when you walk in there?
Well, there needs to be. You know, certainly, you mentioned it. We lost 2 guys that have played a lot of football around here. So if we don't have that, we're going to be in big trouble. Has it really clearly defined itself yet? Not totally, I think, but it's going to be, you know, I think the whole group, and then as guys make plays and continue to do the right thing, then they establish themselves as leaders. It's hard to be a leader when you haven't really played a ton, because part of leadership, in my opinion, is the production that you produce, you know, the things you produce on the field.
Greg, from the beginning, from the first day of spring till the end, what one player in your room made the biggest move, in your opinion, forward, positive, whatever you want to call it, that maybe got your attention that you weren't paying attention to before, or is more in the mix now than ever? I would think Malik Hooker, but you probably already figured on him anyway.
Well, I think that kind of, if you say a guy that, because I didn't even know we were going to have him until practice 3, is Damon Webb.
Yeah.
Right, so Damon comes in after practice 3, I believe it was after practice 3, and really did a tremendous job of learning the position on the fly while playing it, you know, which isn't easy.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was, you know, just by the nature of the timing of it, I had no idea, you know, how he would do, and he did a very good job.
You were head coach at Rutgers, I don't know if you remember that, and then head coach at Tampa Bay. What was your reaction to seeing a crowd like that Saturday for a spring game?
Oh, it was great. I mean, you talk about a fan base that's passionate about their team. Our fans, there's none better. So it was really, you know, everybody had told me about it, but until you see it. I had not coached in that stadium. 1993 was the last time I coached in that stadium. So it's been a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to see Malik Hooker, though, play that at that level in a game, in a situation like that, what does that do for him in your mind?
Well, I think it validates, you know, what we were hoping was the case. He's very comfortable in that setting. He looks very natural. Nothing looked too big for him. And I know he's played on special teams in similar settings, but to do it, I think he played 50-something plays, and he made a lot of plays. That's promising. It's certainly not the regular season. It's not another team. It's our team that he's playing against, but you got to go step by step, and he's doing that right now.
If you started a game tomorrow, who would be your 2 starting safeties?
Well, we don't have one tomorrow, so I don't have to do that.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, when you look at it, Malik and Damon probably had the most productive springs.
Of guys in the spring?
Yeah, but that, you know, we still got a lot of work to do.
At linebacker, Jerome Baker looks like he's going to be a tough guy to keep off the field. I know he's running with the second team right now. Like, what are your thoughts about Jerome Baker?
Very talented guy. You know, that interception, I guess, went instantly viral, right? So, but he's done a lot of things. He can run, he can hit. You know, he just needs repetitions. And, you know, the good thing about the linebacker room is they have a balance of youth and experience, and I think it all mixes together pretty well.
We hear a lot about Larry Johnson rotating on the defensive line. He loves doing that. And I know they've rotated linebackers here before. Luke rotated at middle linebacker on the national championship team with Raekwon and Curtis Grant. Can they do that? Can you guys rotate him at linebacker? Could you rotate a Dante Booker or rotate a Chris Worley and a Jerome Baker? Or is that something you guys would prefer not to do, rotate at linebacker?
I think every year it's different. You know, you have a team and a defense that meshes together, and how they do that and how the chemistry is formed and all those things. Every team's different. To try to predict that really wouldn't be sensible, because you don't know until you go through it and you figure it out. Hey, you know, this guy's strength is this, and this guy's a little better at that. And, you know, you kind of, the whole goal at the end of the day is to play great defense. So how you piece it together personnel-wise and scheme-wise, every year is different. You know, if you don't adjust, then you're making a mistake.
Greg, a couple of years ago at this time, you were consulting with your scouts, I'm sure, and your general manager about building a draft board. Can you give us some insight into how this process works when you get inside a week to the draft and the days leading up to the draft? There's a big trade today with the Browns, for example. How much information is real? How much of it do you actually believe when you hear teams talk about it? How much misinformation do you think is out there when it comes to an NFL team preparing a draft?
Well, it's really a lengthy process, right? So you have a huge operation of people that do all the evaluating, go out to the schools during the school year, during training camp, and gather information. But as you're doing that, you're building a draft board, and then as you get into that postseason time as a coach, as a head coach, you're really involved with the general manager, kind of going through it, adjusting the draft board, and then as you get to this time frame right here, you've really locked in kind of how you have your board stacked, and right now you're just massaging it a little bit. You know, this guy may move here, because you really have two different boards. You have a positional board, then you have an overall board. And you have to do that because you don't know what the other 31 teams are going to do. So you may have this guy right here, but they may, you know, all your picks may be gone when it's your turn to pick. And when that clock starts, you know, you don't have, oh, can we take a timeout? No, there's no timeouts. I mean, you got to pull the trigger in your allotted time. So it's an interesting time. And then when these trades take place in this last week, you know, we spent an awful lot of time and effort in tracking what other teams are doing. You know, so you know what their needs are because you're constantly evaluating pro personnel. So you think you know what their needs are, and then all of a sudden the team that you had slotted in the number 2 pick all of a sudden just traded their pick. So now the other team may have totally different needs, so that can throw what you think's going to happen a little out of whack. So you have to really, it's a multifaceted approach.
It's fascinating to just watch it develop, especially when you, for example, you all track other teams and their needs. I'm sure you also track what's being said about those teams. And so how much of that do you take with a grain of salt, again, because you're not quite sure if you're getting the truth from some places. You might be some places, and you might not be from some others, right?
Well, not unlike here,
Yeah.
I'm sure. You know, you get to know which media outlets have the best information for each team and for each coach and for each GM. So when so-and-so says something, you put more credence into it than when someone else says it. At that team, not necessarily overall, but just at that team. So again, it is an exhaustive approach, and at the end of the day, the best advice I got was you better make sure that in your pocket you have a list of 10 or 15 guys that you want to be on your football team when the draft is over. And hopefully you can get 5 or 6 or 7 or however many picks you have on your squad by then.
Greg, if Garyon Conley does what he needs to do, could we be talking about him as a first-round pick at this time next year? Garyon Conley?
I hope so. I mean, he's a very talented guy who's played a lot of plays around here.
Does he have that type
actually
of?
hope that we fast forward 2 years and we're talking about it, but the reality of college football these days is, you know, if they're good enough, they're going to go. So he's got a chance for sure. You know, watching, he's a talented guy. He's a guy that works awfully hard, very, very serious about his approach to the game, and he's working awfully hard to develop himself physically. You know, it's a matter of going out and doing it again.
You're now able to work with these guys on a limited basis in the summer. How important will that be this year?
Huge. I think, you know, again, I haven't been here for the previous 4, but I think just listening to the coaching staff, our development, you know, it's the year of development, and our development right now is critical because we have a lot of guys that have not played a lot of game time experience, and we need to get them ready to do that.
Did you see enough progress from your guys in the spring that you feel you're never going to be satisfied, but at least comfortable with where they are in the process?
I don't know if coaches are ever comfortable, right? I'm encouraged. I don't know if that's a better word to say. I'm encouraged that we have a chance. And when you come out of spring, you hope you have a chance. And then you train all summer and you work with your guys, and then you get to training camp. And I think training camp is critical because it's every day. It's back to back to back. That's really when I think you make your biggest strides. Because just pure repetition, focus, that's all you're doing. There's no school, there's no, it's football, all football. It's the only time during the year that a college football player can say that. So I think it has to be a very critical time. But by having a good spring, you give yourself a chance to go out and have a great training camp.
Could you tell a difference between the way some guys were in practice and the way they reacted in front of the crowd in the spring game? And were there some guys you said, wow, that's a different guy than what we've seen the last few weeks?
Not so much different, but some guys, like I mentioned, Malik just looked very comfortable in the whole atmosphere. He was very comfortable doing his job. And some young guys, some freshmen, some guys that maybe started mid-year, looking around, it's pretty cool. Last time they played, maybe they was in front of 6,000. Now it was 100,000. A little different. So it was interesting to watch everybody's reaction.
Even losing two guys early to the NFL at the safety spot, do you feel pretty good about the depth, assuming you get Eric Smith back? You talked up Malik Hooker and Damon Webb. Do you feel like you guys have pretty good depth at safety?
I think unknown right now. With Eric coming off injury, Cam really practicing going live half the spring. But, he hasn't really, the rust is, shaking it off. But it's still, when you go one day and you're off a day, you really don't get it where you're flowing. So I think we have to develop the depth at the safety position.
The spring was a learning process for you guys, and getting used to working with you and you working with them, being at Ohio State. Coming out of it, do you feel like they understand maybe like your level of expectations, what they need to do from now until the open of training camp?
I think they do, yeah. I think one thing that's real clear, not only in our room but in every room, the way that Urban runs his program is, there's not a lot of gray area. This is what we do, this is who we are, and this is how we're going to do it. Either climb on board and let's go, or jump off board, but there's no in between.
And I think we spoke to you the first week of spring, and then, it was very early in the process of your adjustment, actually like being on the field and coaching, especially alongside Luke. How is that kind of continued in the past month and a half or so, and do you guys like where you're at going into the summer and working together to put things in place for the fall?
Working with Luke and working with the entire defensive staff, and really working with the whole staff, right? Because as a defensive coach, you're going against the offense all spring, so you have to, a lot of collaborative work that you do together. I think it's great. I think we got a great staff, as I mentioned earlier. After going through spring, I even have a better feel and an even higher opinion of our staff. And certainly our players.
Yeah, because I'm just curious because you were a head coach at the highest level of football that there is, and now you're back being a coordinator and being a position coach, at a university, and this is your first real test of that after being out of football. I'm just curious how you feel personally comfortable with where you're at, and after you took that year off and did what you needed to do there.
Yeah, very comfortable. Yeah, very much so.
Hey, real quick non-football question. How do you like Columbus, Ohio? How does your family like it? Just talk about being here in Columbus.
Like it a lot. It's a great town, passionate fan base. My family actually is moving up once they finish school, so they're still down in Tampa.
Okay.
So they're moving up here in the summer. But it's been really good. And I haven't spent a lot of time other than in our football center and at the hotel. It's been a lot of work, but it's a neat town. The times I have gotten out in recruiting and some other things, you can see it's a passionate group of people.
Thanks, Greg.
Thank you.